What if I told you that an article written way back in 1910, we're talking over 100 years ago, could perfectly explain our modern global supply chain? I mean, everything from the power of cities like Singapore and Dubai to why your packages take the strange routes they do. It sounds wild, but today we're going to dive into this incredible piece of writing and explore a fascinating concept called the World Entrepôt, the one single city that once acted as the entire world's middleman. Just think about it for a second. Long before you could click a button and have something from halfway across the world show up at your door, the world needed, well, a central warehouse. A single place that would collect all the valuable stuff from one side of the planet and then ship it out to the other. So the big questions are, how did one city ever get that powerful? And maybe more importantly, why don't we have one anymore? The author of our source material, a guy named J. Russell Smith, had a term for this: a world entrepôt. It's a really simple but powerful idea, right? One single commercial hub responsible for distributing a specific product, or even a whole bunch of them, to the entire known world. It's the linchpin for everything. So, what did it actually take to become the world's middleman? As you can probably guess, it wasn't just about having a nice harbor. Nope. A very specific and pretty rare set of conditions had to be just right. And when you look at these conditions, they make perfect sense. First off, the goods themselves had to be super valuable, but also pretty small. Think spices, silks, precious teas. For stuff like that, the cost of shipping is almost nothing compared to what it's worth. Second, the trade had to cover huge distances, like from Asia all the way to Europe. And finally, and this is key, the city itself needed its own dense network of local shipping lines to get the goods to their final homes. It had to be the heart of a massive circulatory system. For hundreds of years, this top spot, the World Entrepôt, was never a sure thing. It was like a crown that was constantly being passed from one city to another, usually because of a war, a new discovery, or some kind of game-changing technology. It was truly a game of trading thrones. You can see this great relay race of power right here. For centuries, Venice was the undisputed queen, controlling the overland trade routes. But then, boom, 1499, Vasco da Gama finds an all-sea route to India, and suddenly, Lisbon is the new king of the spice trade. From there, power shifts north to Antwerp, and after a war, its merchants pack up and move to Amsterdam, making it the absolute capital of commerce. And finally, the Industrial Revolution kicks in, and London, with its coal and steam power, snatches the crown. But, why did some cities hang on to power so much longer than others? Well, this little comparison between Venice and Lisbon tells you everything. Lisbon got the new sea route, sure, but that's kind of all it had. It didn't have many local industries. It was basically just a pit stop for ships. Venice, on the other hand, was a manufacturing beast with a huge established shipping network. It proves a crucial point. Just controlling a route is not enough. You need a powerful local economy to really be a global hub. And speaking of power, get a load of this number. In the mid-1600s, when Amsterdam was at its absolute peak, there were maybe 20,000 merchant ships in all of Europe. Well, the Dutch owned 16,000 of them. That is 80%. They weren't just another player in the game. For a while there, they were the game. So what on earth could topple a giant like that? One word: technology. See, the Netherlands had mastered the old world of commerce, the one built on hand labor and windmills. But England was starting something totally new: the age of machinery. It had tons of coal, it pioneered steam power, and while a lot of Europe was caught up in wars, England was quietly becoming the world's workshop. Industrial power had finally overtaken commercial power. Now, the rise of London was actually the last time a single city could really claim that title of World Entrepôt. And the irony is, the very forces that gave London all its power, industrialization and steam, were the exact same forces that were about to blow the whole single hub model to pieces. According to our 1910 source, it was a 1-2 punch that killed the system. First, global trade just got way too big and bulky. We weren't just moving silks and spices anymore. Now it was massive quantities of cotton, grain, coal. And second, steamships and railways created this incredible web of direct routes. All of a sudden, you didn't have to go through a middleman anymore. I mean, just try to imagine the physical scale of it all. We're not talking about a few chests of tea. We're talking about literal mountains of wheat and iron ore. There is no single port on this planet, no matter how efficient, that could possibly handle all of that. The system just had to break apart and decentralize. And this was the direct result. As soon as a country like Germany or the US had enough demand to fill up an entire cargo ship with tea from India, why on earth would they pay extra for it to stop in London first? They wouldn't. They just set up their own direct shipping lines. The middleman was officially getting cut out of the deal. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even though the single physical hub was a thing of the past, some of these cities held on to an incredible amount of power. Why? Well, because you can decentralize the movement of goods, but it is way, way harder to decentralize things like trust, expertise, and of course, money. The author makes this brilliant distinction between two types of goods. You've got gradable goods, like wheat. You can sell a whole shipload of that by telegraph while it's still out on the ocean because the buyer knows exactly what they're getting. But then you have ungradable goods, like wool. Its value depends on all sorts of things, dirt, grease, fiber strength. A buyer absolutely has to inspect it in person. And that means those kinds of goods are still drawn like a magnet to a central, trusted marketplace. This quote from the source just sums it all up, doesn't it? There's this incredible inertia, this gravity, to a market once it's established. Even if some other city builds a better port, if everybody agrees that Bremen is the place to buy tobacco, well, that's where all the tobacco is going to end up. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this drawing power leads to shipping routes that look totally insane on a map. You'd see wool from Australia, meant for a factory in Boston, get shipped all the way to London first. Why? It was to give the seller the option to sell it on the big London market if the price was good. The market itself has gravity. But beyond just the marketplace, the real hidden power is finance. Let's say you're a small factory owner. You can't afford to buy an entire year's worth of wool at one time. And even if you could, it's a huge risk. What if the price crashes? So what's the solution? You just buy smaller batches from merchants in a big hub like London whenever you need it. It's the huge financial centers, the Londons of the world, that use their deep pockets to absorb all that risk. And that, right there, is what keeps them absolutely essential. Okay, so let's put these rules to the test. Near the end of his article, back in 1910, the author actually applies his entire theory to a big question people were asking back in his day. At the time, the Philippines was a new American territory, and there was all this buzz, all this hype that Manila was perfectly positioned to become the next great gateway to Asia, the next world-class hub. But our author? Well, he wasn't buying it. He laid out 3 crystal-clear reasons why it would never work. First, geography. It's an island, far from the Asian mainland, kind of like how Cuba is far from North America. Second, and this is a big one, shipping routes. Any ship coming from America to Asia had to sail right past major ports in Japan and China just to get to Manila. And then he gives us a golden rule. Great hubs always push inland, trying to get closer to the heart of a continent. They don't retreat out into the ocean. So his conclusion was pretty clear. Manila's destiny wasn't to be the hub for all of Asia, but to be the hub for the Philippines. A vital job, for sure, collecting all the island's goods for export and handing out the imports. A critical role, just a different one. And you know what? A century of history proved him absolutely right. And that really is the biggest takeaway here. The era of one city to rule them all is long gone. Today, we've got a whole bunch of powerful regional hubs: Singapore, Hamburg, Hong Kong, you name it. But the fundamental laws of geography, of finance, of market gravity that our 1910 author laid out, they are still the exact same laws that decide who wins and who loses today. Which really leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? In our world of one-click ordering and instant digital everything, it's so easy to forget that real physical stuff still has to travel across the planet to get to us. So the question is, what are those invisible forces of geography, capital, and plain old trust that are, right this very second, shaping the incredible journey of everything you own?